This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Brueski, Stacey Cole, and Todd Michaels.
There you go. You had a chance to see how that all went down last night with the verdict in Donna Adelson. And what... I had sweet dreams. I had sweet dreams last night knowing that Donna is behind bars for the rest of her life. How about you guys? Did you guys feel good?
I didn't sleep much.
Were you having nightmares that Donna was going to come and ruin your life? Or
she reminds me of my grandmother, Bertha was her name. She's
Bertha?
Yes.
There's a name.
I was supposed to be named after her. So thank God my mom came out of her stupor of all the drugs when she had me and said, no, I am not having a daughter named Bertha.
That would have been great.
Right?
Hidden Killers.
Yeah. Donna
Tony,
reminds me a
Bertha,
lot.
and Todd.
Tony, Bertha, and Todd in the morning.
You have to change your name, I think. But
oh God, yeah.
I think a lot of people have moments that she reminds people of.
Yeah.
Or people.
But I feel bad. At least it's not her first day in prison.
Yeah.
I always picture that when somebody is convicted of something, they've been out this entire time, and then that night is the first night in the.
Well, there is a difference here. She's going from jail to prison, so it is kind of her first day in prison. Do they
do cavity searches?
I'm sure they do all sorts of searches, and they're not going to find any banana bread up anybody's ass. I'll tell you that much. So maybe a little paella, but that's only if Harvey's been visiting, because he's going to hire or Charlie's been visiting with the paella chef as your birthday present. Well, there's a lot now to try and unravel here. Now that Donna Adelson is gone. Eric Faddis, defense attorney, former prosecutor, joining us. Eric, you have prosecuted 55 jury trials, including murder cases. This took just 3 hours to convict Donna on just last night. Donna on all counts. Let's start bisecting what made this case so compelling. That jailhouse informant. Prosecutors relied heavily on Patricia Bird and Drina Bernhardt, inmates who testified Donna confessed and then tried to buy false testimony, exchanges for a grand piano, cash, all sorts of, conjugal visits with Harvey, things like that. I'm kidding. I made that part up.
No. Ew. Wait.
People are lining up for that shit. As a former prosecutor, how risky is building a case around a jailhouse witness like this?
There is always exposure on the prosecution side when you have witnesses who are behind bars, who have an incentive to improve their legal position, and whose credibility can be attacked because the other side's going to say, hey, they're just making up and saying whatever the government wants them to say because they think they're going to get a benefit. That's always a risk. Turns out was not an unreasonable risk here because the jury ultimately, it seems, accepted the inmate's testimony about Donna Adelson's orchestration of all of this and her attempts to kind of cover it up.
They certainly accepted it in this case, which is interesting because sometimes that testimony is taken different ways, but I guess they came across to that jury as very authentic. And I want to let everybody know who's watching us live right now on YouTube. Please, in the comment section, if you have a question for Eric about this case, throw it out there and we'll try and get to it in our conversation here. Certainly they got to believing these two inmates talking about the $10,000 grand piano, drugs for false testimony. It almost made the insane offers made it more believable because it totally plays into how Donna Adelson acts. But what sort of does this open up grounds for appeal or anything like this with testimony from jailhouse snitches?
I don't see any colorable grounds for appeal arising out of their testimony. Of course, defense can lodge what's called a sufficiency of evidence appeal, just saying, hey, there actually wasn't enough evidence for a reasonable juror to convict me based in part on testimony from jailhouse snitches that the jury should have deemed unreliable. But those arguments on appeal rarely are ever granted. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of traction here, in part because the testimony from inmates sort of was woven into some of the other evidence and preempted a defense that Donna tried to kind of raise with respect to payments at a later time.
Let's talk more about that. Why was the testimony of the inmates so powerful in this case versus some others where you have inmates testifying and it's pretty easy to see, they want a little tit for tat, something going on here. But what made this stand out stronger than other ones?
I think a few things, Tony. One was the inmate's proximity to Donna Adelson. One was her cellmate. The other described Donna Adelson as the inmate's jailhouse mom. And so, what that established was that these folks had a rapport. They were close. And jurors can use their common sense. Hey, when we're talking with someone who's close to the defendant on the inside, they're all desperate. They're all going through this horribly distressing situation. Oftentimes individuals confide in one another. That's just something that happens. That's human nature. And so I think that played a role. And then also when the jury heard from the inmate that Donna Adelson wanted to make this out as something like her being extorted and Charlie being extorted. And the inmate said, hey, that was all a ruse. There was a script and everything that I was supposed to go by to create this falsehood that she was being extorted. And then in the defense's case, where Donna puts up a witness who says, oh, yeah, it was her position she was being extorted. I think the jury kind of looked at those things in their entirety and said, wait a sec, this seems much more like a ruse than some sort of sincere extortion.
How early on do you think those inmates saw Donna for what she was? and jailhouse mom and all the, cuddly, lovey, things that are going on. But more so, oh, this woman is insane. This woman is trying to is asking us to testify positively for her. She's offering this, she's offering that. Do you think they saw her coming and said, okay, let's play along because this insanity is going to get us some traction here with our own cases and maybe some sort of leniency. So let's lean into Donna and make her think we're all buddy-buddy.
Oh, that very well could be how it played out behind those jail walls. Look, jail people who are incarcerated, some are book smart, some are not, but many are street smart. They're good at reading people. They're savvy. They're good at identifying avenues that they can explore to improve their situation. And so I think they saw Donna Adelson, this wealthy, older person who's sort of way out of her depth, in above her head. She's offering a grand piano, among other things, in order to, in exchange for falsified testimony. I think the witnesses said, hey, this is a pretty easy mark. And I might feign as if we're super buddy in here, but that's not how it played out in court. And I imagine they recognized Donna's vulnerability and a way that they could improve their situation pretty early on.
Go ahead, Stacey.
I'd like to think that she got her grand piano. I mean, I'm an optimist here. I don't know what she would have done with it. I mean, she was going to be in there for a while. I don't know what her sentence was, but I'd like to think that Donna would follow through a little bit.
I would think the grand piano, the dimensions of it are probably twice as large as some of the dimensions within a jail cell. Probably not going to be doing any concertos inside those jail walls at anytime soon.
What an odd thing, right?
You put it in the cell, and then you have levels. Then you can go on top of the levels, Jerry. Levels. You're building the apartment in levels. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to think of Donna. What are the logistics? How are you going to get? Number one, moving a grand piano is hell. It's like a pool table. You just kind of leave it where you're at half the time. Enjoy the piano.
Was this for when she got out of prison? I mean, I'd love to know the details of this. How does this go down? I mean,
yeah, I'm not sure Donna had thought out all of these details. What it strikes me as, like I said, is someone who is kind of a fish out of water, doesn't know what to do. I have this money and stuff. Let me make some desperate offer to these people to kind of save my behind. And I think the people are saying, hey, this lady is detached from reality. I'm going to exploit that for my own gain.
I wonder if Donna ever had any intent of setting the grand piano, or if this was a situation where they were both playing each other. And they both knew, like Donna knew she was playing these people. I'm going to say whatever I need to say. Oh, Harvey will help get you the drugs. This will happen over here. You're going to get money. Everything's going to be lovely. And she's just saying whatever she needs to say to survive and think that she's going to convince these people to testify for her. And then, after that, screw you. I'm free. I don't need to do anything for you. You're a convict behind bars. And at the same time, they were planning to play her simultaneously. That kind of feels like how this went. And they both, the only one that really, I think, thought that maybe she was going to get away with it was Donna.
Yeah, I hear you. I agree that I think Donna, really strikes me as, and in fact, much of the Adelson families kind of strikes me as people who think they're untouchable. They have this wealth. They've developed some influence and power in their community, and they think they can kind of just do whatever. They can orchestrate this murder for hire plot. They're not going to get caught. Mm-hmm. They sort of have these delusions. And then when you look at the real world of criminal justice, to which they have not probably been exposed in any great depth, that's a harsh realization, and the harshest realization came down with the jury verdict of guilty.
This was certainly a case, as Georgia put it. I mean, it's death by 1,000 cuts, and one of those cuts was Dan Markel's license plate number being scribbled down on Donna's 2014 planner. How do seemingly small details like that help to eliminate reasonable doubt in a case like this for a jury?
I think there are a number of ways. One is that it's corroborative of the prosecution's theme that Donna was overly controlling. She was overly involved, personally enmeshed in this child custody dispute for her grandchildren, such that she would go to these great lengths. And when you look at her writing down the license plate, there was other testimony that she was sort of tracking Dan Markel's whereabouts. Who in the world does that for their son-in-law, even if you don't like them, without some nefarious purpose? And tracking those whereabouts, we sort of learned through other testimony, could have been some sort of measure taken to try to blame this on Wendi's boyfriend, who also testified. They're trying to align where someone is going to be, what the vehicles involved are, and that's a good way to sort of build a fabrication that someone else did this.
It feels like they were building their fabrication by playing Mad Libs, though. I mean, this does not feel like it was very well thought out. It feels like, as we go along here, Wendi, you're dating somebody? Break up with them and then act like you're going to get back together and ask where he was this day. And then that's our narrative. That it was him. He must have driven by, decided to stop off and murder your ex-husband. I mean, the planning here is horrendous in terms of
planning.
I mean, it doesn't even feel like planning. It's more like what's going on today and how can we kind of make these puzzle pieces fit together? There didn't seem to be any sort of afterthought of, okay, Dan Markel is murdered. Now what? Do you think there was anything here that was just completely overlooked or that they completely overlooked and really poorly brought to the table in terms of their story?
I think sophisticated criminals, the Adelsons, are not. They didn't plan this out the way that I've seen other cases be planned out by the defense. One thing I'm wondering is if they thought that they were insulated by the barrier they tried to impose between the Adelsons and then Magdemois and the killers on the other side. I think they tried to kind of erect a wall. There wasn't a ton of communication, if any, between Donna Adelson and the killers. And so I thought, maybe they thought, hey, we've got this on lock. We're good. But criminal investigation and digital forensics and people, wanting to better themselves while in prison have proven that plan was not foolproof and was really problematic.
Eric, can I throw something in here? I'm curious, have you, as a defense attorney, been presented with a family as messed up as this or anything close where you're just like, Oh my God. I'm questioning my life choices here.
Gosh, Stacey, good question. As a former prosecutor and defense attorney, I've come across a number of family affairs in the criminal justice system. That's not terribly uncommon. Oftentimes family wants to come to the aid of one another. Somebody gets in a tight spot. They start engaging in desperate measures to protect that person. I'm not sure I've seen something involving multiple members of the family, and then also this murder for hire plot, and the manipulation and control that was evident during the trial on behalf of the Adelsons. And then also you put another level of kind of their arrogance, their thought that they're untouchable. They're not going to get caught for this. I've certainly seen similar cases, but this one's right up there with a conspiring family who got caught.
Let me ask you this.
At least multiple members have been caught. We'll see how the rest goes.
Exactly. And we'll get to that shortly.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. How important is image in court? Obviously, you can't necessarily completely control the image that the prosecution is going to bring at you. All you can do is control what you have. One of those things being yourself, like literal your physical self in that courtroom. We've seen all different variations of this over the years with different defendants looking this way, looking that way, sometimes looking dramatically different than they did even the day before. Let's just start there before we start analyzing Donna's appearance in court and how she played to that jury. Just how important is that in your own experience, Eric?
I think it's critically important, Tony. In every trial I've had, the jury is focused on a lot. They're focused on the prosecutor, they're focused on the lawyers, they're focused on the judge, but you better believe they are laser focused on that defendant. They are watching, they're seeing how that person presents themselves visually. They're looking over that person's demeanor. They're looking at their facial expressions in response to certain evidence that comes up. And they are gauging that as humans will, because, they have to ultimately decide the legal fate of this person. So all eyes are on that defendant. And it's so important for that defendant to be prepared and to have kind of a cohesive and reasonable and acceptable presentation that's not going to cause jurors to raise a bunch of eyebrows.
What do you think the plan was going into this behind closed doors when Donna was sitting there having conversations with Tom Petty and trying to figure out, how are we going to play this? How do you think that went?
Yeah, so those conversations go different ways with different defendants. In this case, I think that they really wanted to try to play upon sympathetic grandma. She's a sympathetic grandma, and she's invested, and she cares about her family, and she cares about these children, and was meddling of sorts, and sometimes grandmothers do that. That's something we can all relate to, and so I think sort of making that presentation of Donna Adelson in terms of who she is was important. But then you have kind of these more nefarious pieces of evidence that cut against that, and I think the jury heard some of those things in the phone taps and evidence from witnesses and said, wait a sec, this isn't really the sweet old lady that they're presenting her to be.
They basically just put a cardigan on her and called it good. I mean, it was not very impressive. I was thinking maybe there might be some grandma sweaters. Maybe she'd show up one day with the banana bread, and offer loaves to people or something laced with cyanide. You never know what she might do. But it really, I didn't think her look made that much of an impact. In this case, I think she could have probably done a lot better, quite honestly, in terms of looking like the matronly grandmother. But her reactions, that was a big issue in this trial. The judge scolding her, of course, at the very end, but that wasn't the first time he scolded her. He scolded her throughout the trial several times for her very verbose reactions to testimony. How do you think that was helping Donna in any way, shape, or form in those moments in time, or did Donna just keep taking a shovel to that grave?
I think a better presentation for Donna could have been just really this meek little mouse, this scared grandma who's being railroaded by her government. Something tragic happened in her family, and now they're trying to place the blame on her, and she's just sort of cowering and small and scared and that kind of thing. But however, like you said, there was behavior from Donna Adelson that didn't square with that. She's having these outbursts in court. She's, she's visibly reacting to what the testimony is that's coming out in a way that seemed, not passive, certainly, in a way that seemed more like she was prone to significant overreactions, perhaps, but by things that are happening around her. And so it sort of seemed more aggressive, in my opinion, and controlling, perhaps. And that's the exact wrong image that they ought to have been portraying.
So, Eric, question for you, and I guess it's more of courtroom etiquette. So the verdict had been read. I hope I have the timing right on this. And then she had the outburst, and then the judge admonished her for it, saying, you're not going to act this way in front of the jury. Why does this matter at this point? The verdict is in, they've deliberated, they're about ready to hit the road. Why would that matter at this point?
With respect to the reaction post-verdict, the reason it matters for the judge is that judge has a duty to kind of maintain decorum, to maintain the integrity of the court. Okay. Look, if the judge allowed these kinds of outbursts during the reading of a verdict, it would happen in a bunch of cases. And in fact, sometimes what happens is there is kind of a dissension among the gallery and the jury. Sometimes there are fights that break out. The judge can't allow that. He has to make sure his courtroom is monitored and things proceed by the book. And so I think that was really the judge's motivation for coming down on that outburst. So
it wasn't to somehow protect the jury in any way from her. It was just, get your shit together, people.
I think that's a piece of it too, because, the jury has a very difficult decision in any case, certainly in a homicide case. And the judge wants to protect the jury from any kind of negative response and feedback with respect to their decision. They should feel comfortable as best they can in their decision. They shouldn't feel fear of retaliation or condemnation or something like that. So I think that's a good point, Stacey. I think that was a part of it too, was to protect the jury from any kind of negative backlash that could happen from one side as a result of their verdict.
The testimony, some of the biggest stuff that I think a lot of us watched, paid more attention to, Wendi Adelson testifying about her mother's controlling nature and all that she couldn't remember. And then Robert coming up and describing Donna's obsession with controlling her children's lives. I mean, what's the psychological impact when the family themselves, the kids of the matriarch, are testifying against their own mother?
There was certainly no testimony that Donna Adelson was like a hands-off, passive family member who just let people live and let live and whatever happens, happens. Really was the opposite of that. And when you're hearing it from the mouths of the children, these are the people who know Donna Adelson best. They've known her their whole lives. And so they've seen this play out over the course of years, and they really didn't have any significant motive to fabricate that fact to anybody. I think the jury just said, gosh, these kids are in here telling us what their mom is like, and I don't have any reason to disbelieve that.
There was a lot of testimony. There was a lot of throwing people under the bus in this trial. More than I was expecting from the enmeshed family, or the once enmeshed family of the Adelsons. Wendi being thrown under the bus several times. Harvey even a little bit. Let's start talking about these guys a little bit and what the future may hold for them. Wendi, obviously, she drove past Dan's house the day of the murder, right when it was, shortly after it went on. Police are there. Then she has that TV repair man coming. Prosecutor Georgia Kappelman even made some hints during the during the prosecution here about staying tuned about Wendi. There was a lot, and then there was a lot that seemed to show that Wendi had some sort of knowledge. Again, this is, kind of our take on it. She's innocent. She's never been charged with anything, at least as of this moment in time. What's preventing charges against Wendi at this point, if anything?
Yeah, a lot of people have seen the cards kind of fall one by one in this case. When you have the contract killers, you have the middle person, Catherine, you have Charlie Adelson, he's already down for the count. Now we have Donna. Who could be next? Wendi's boyfriend testified that Wendi told him she was aware that Charlie was exploring all options to take care of Dan Markel, including a hitman. So she knew that gosh, her brother might hire a hitman to kill her husband. That's incriminating. And then also the talks of sort of possibly trying to frame the boyfriend, asking him all these questions about where he was that day to try to get things to align in a way Wendi wanted, I think is of course problematic. Does it rise to the level of a charge? The charge of first-degree murder would have to mean that Wendi knew it was going to happen and provided some material aid to make sure that Dan Markel was dead and that she wanted him dead. That's a tall order. But there are also things like accessory after the fact. If you're trying to conceal a crime, that can be a crime in and of itself. And so I don't think Wendi is completely immune from any future criminal charges, and those could come down the pike based on her knowledge and the actions she took allegedly to perhaps try to cover this up or blame somebody else wrongfully.
Let's talk about that for a second, because she did have some level of immunity here. She testified under limited immunity at her mom's trial. And maybe you can help shed some light on exactly what that means. Can prosecutors still charge her with independent evidence outside of what she testified about, what others may have testified about, what her ex-boyfriend may have testified about? And does cooperation actually increase her legal exposure here?
Yeah, limited immunity is less of a protection than it might sound like, because what it means is that Wendi can't be prosecuted based on anything she said at the trial. That immunity bears no relation to what other witnesses may have said at the trial. And there were some juicy details that came out that could implicate Wendi. And so, even if Wendi might think that she's home scot-free, but I don't believe that's the case. I believe there is independent evidence that can be used to be the basis for a charge, should it be sufficient, and should the prosecutors choose to go down that road. There's
a lot of the ones that stand out to me, and obviously you are the defense attorney, you are the former prosecutor. The vacation issues, where she canceled the vacation with her ex and needed to be there to make sure she could pick up the kids the following day. Their flight was going to land the day prior in the morning. There was no issue with that, but that seemed to be her reasoning to him as to why she had to be back. That day happened to be the day that Dan Markel was murdered. You also have the swimming. Dan saying, I want to see if I can take the kids to go swimming. Wendi says, no, that's not going to work. She calls Charlie. Charlie goes, yeah, that might work for you. Calls him back and says, you can take the kids to go swimming. I'm going to guess she had some knowledge that he might be dead by then, which is extremely creepy. After that call with Charlie to go and change your mind suddenly to say, oh yeah, go ahead, take the kids swimming. The driving by, going to the liquor store, your kids, you don't know where they're at. You don't seem to show much concern about that. And after the fact, there did seem to be a lot of information floating around that family that may have led her to think, maybe my family did do this, considering she was the first one to raise their names in police questioning. Those are the ones that stand out to me. What say you?
Yeah, I think what we have here is sort of a constellation of different, very suspicious circumstances. And if Wendi's boyfriend is to be believed, that Wendi had actual knowledge that Charlie was at least considering hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel. And so the question becomes, what did Wendi do to make that easier? Did she provide some kind of aid? Did she was she involved in the discussions? There were some discussions about that TV, which I think the jury believed that was code word for information regarding this hit, and Wendy's discussed that. And so, where is the line? How did she cross that line in trying to make this easier, and or trying to cover it up, and or trying to make it happen? That's kind of the missing link, at least in terms of publicly available information, that would need to be shored up before she could be charged.
Do you think we're getting close? Do you think that they're sitting there, that they're in waiting? Obviously, it took a little bit of time for Donna to be arrested after Charlie's. It took her going to the airport, trying to flee, and they said, well, we got to get her now. It's now or never. Think they're sitting there watching Wendi?
Oh, yeah, I think they've if they're doing their job, I think they've been surveilling Wendi since probably the very beginning, and continuously in an ongoing way. And so we're talking a long time, or more than a decade. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I think they're probably, I wouldn't be surprised if they have wiretaps on her phone or have had that in the past. And then additionally, if I was the prosecutor and I really wanted to get Wendi, what I would try to do would be to establish this alleged framing of the boyfriend and Wendy's intent to do that. If she had even if she didn't frame the boyfriend, if she had a intention to do so, and perhaps had a conspiracy and agreement with one of the other Adelsons to try to accomplish that, even if the framing didn't work, that itself could be conspiracy as an accessory after the fact. It could be conspiracy to obstruct a police investigation. There are a number of options the prosecutors still have in terms of possibly viable charges.
Yeah. Stacey?
I'm wondering, like, I'm trying to figure out Wendi in this whole thing. We had some people who were thinking in our chat room that Wendi was the mastermind of this. Let's just say that was what really was going on here, which I don't think it is, but some people think it is. Did they save the best for last? Do you think that that's a possibility? Like, she is the mastermind here, and we're going to nail her last. We're going to get all the other pieces leading up to her. Is that a possible scenario?
It would not be unusual at all. In fact, it would be kind of consistent with how prosecutors often go about approaching a multi-defendant murder conspiracy. You try to get the predicate parts in place. You get all of your ducks in a row, and they've secured 5 convictions, they've convicted 5 people already. And so sometimes you secure all of those things, and then you maybe even go back to those folks and you say, hey, look, if Wendi was really behind this, and we're just talking hypothetically, I'm not claiming she is, but if she's really behind this, why don't, Donna, you tell us a little bit more. Do you want to spend the rest of your life in prison for your daughter if she was really at the helm of this? Same to you, Charlie. What do you think about that? And they sort of build up to this grand finale of going after the head honcho, and wouldn't be surprised if that's the approach that they're considering, if they have that evidence and if they believe that that's what happened.
We may have a series finale on our hands. This is just season 4. This is like Ted Lasso, man. The next season is coming.
It's coming. The teaser's already out on Netflix. The trailer's out. Donna did not testify in this, and I'm wondering if there's a reason for that. I'm wondering if her testimony, if her verbally throwing Wendi under the bus, if she were to do that, if her verbally throwing Harvey under the bus, the few that are left out here, if she is holding those cards and waiting for being behind bars in prison for a little bit, that she can raise her hand and go, oh, you want to get Wendi? I got some information for you. Kind of playing the cards that the jailhouse snitches did. Is there any room in this drama for that to happen, for Donna to try and come back with something that will give her some sort of cushion behind bars, lesser sense, something where she can play those cards at some point?
I think people who have watched the trial have fairly observed that Donna, it can be rather conniving. She has some, there's some machinations going on up there in terms of protecting herself and in terms of trying to get what she wants. So would it make sense for her to keep, one or two cards close to the vest in the event that something goes really horrible at trial, which it has for her? Yeah, that's not surprising. And she might have more information on the inside, and that could mitigate her sentence. You'd be surprised how motivated folks can be once you're in a box with a bunch of other scary people, and how badly they want to get out.
Do you think that's going to happen? I mean, are we thinking too much? Are we giving Donna too much credit? I mean, this is a woman who laundered money in a washing machine.
Literally.
So is she thinking that far ahead? Is she thinking that this is a great idea? Obviously, she's conniving. She's evil. She has no soul. She has no empathy for anybody other than herself. That's pretty much established. But is she wise enough to play that card down the road? Or do you think she chose not to testify for any other reasons?
There are certainly other plausible explanations as to why she didn't testify. We talk about the paper trail, the payments to Magbanua, and from the Adelson Institute when Magbanua wasn't working there. But lo and behold, she was the intermediary for a murder for hire plot involving the Adelson family. So, it'd be hard to be peppered with questions from a seasoned prosecutor about that. There are communications between Donna and Charlie that are problematic. There is sort of coded language that it would be hard to kind of explain on the witness stand. So I think there are other plausible explanations, but also maybe she was keeping some information for herself and saying, hey, I don't want to implicate my family if I don't have to, but if I get convicted, I might have to.
Do you think they're all for themselves at this point? Is the bond broken? Are they, just judging by the amount of throwing under the bus that seemed to happen here? Obviously, Donna didn't testify, but the throwing of the bus, came in the form of, her attorney, Tom Petty, throwing everybody under the bus.
Yeah. Certainly this family has been shattered. There's, they may have been close knit and they certainly had some success as a family, monetarily and otherwise, but now it is just in shambles. And with two of the main Adelsons in prison and other Adelsons potentially in the crosshairs, going to depend on what evidence there is. I'm not sure they're out, looking out for one another, all for one and one for all. I think it's all for me, and that's how it's going to proceed as things get even more tumultuous with these prison terms.
Yeah. The other one that you're talking about that is behind bars, the other Adelson, Charlie, he is behind bars. We were thinking maybe he'll make a surprise cameo appearance in this season of the Adelsons on trial. He did not. He stayed behind bars, never showed up. Why do you think that is?
I would have to check on the exact status of his appeal. I don't remember exactly where it was at the time of the trial. If the appeal was still pending, or if he still had what's called a habeas corpus appellate attempt that can sometimes be brought after a direct appeal is denied. If he had any chance at all of a legal means of getting out of prison through the courts, then he would likely invoke his Fifth Amendment on the stand. He would likely say, hey, I can't talk about anything incriminating or that could be incriminating, or ask questions that could elicit an incriminating response, because I have these appeals to worry about and I've got to cover my own behind. That could have been what's going on, but he did testify in his own trial. And so there is a transcript of, everything he said. So it's a little bit unclear as to why he didn't testify. It might be a Fifth Amendment thing.
Did the trial do anything to hurt or help his appeal chances?
Oh dear. Well, it kind of depends on the judge who would be hearing the appeal, because, one judge could look at it as, oh my God, you helped your sister's husband get killed. And then not only that, but you involved your whole family in it. And your mother, who's like this woman who's, elderly at this point, is going to have to spend the rest of her life in prison. You're a monster. On the other hand, a different judge could look at it and say, if we're talking about the total amount of responsibility in this case, we just added another person who was, arguably kind of orchestrating this and really wanted it to happen, does that diminish Charlie's responsibility? Can he argue that, hey, this was a really toxic family situation, but really my mom was more responsible than me. I'm less culpable. Can I get less time, please? I think either of those are possibilities, depending on how the appellate judge looks at it.
Yeah. Harvey obviously was touched on several times. I wouldn't say quite as much as Wendi in this trial, but we certainly saw him sitting there throughout the entire case, looking like the Jeff Dunham puppet character. But he was there. He also, from what we understand, and we didn't learn a ton about the context of the conversation, but he did communicate allegedly with Sigfrido Garcia, the killer, right around the time of the murder. That fact that exists, he was ready to get on the plane too and flee. Why is there nothing here on Harvey? Is he just going along as this spouse that's completely oblivious to what his wife was up to?
This trial really illustrates how additional evidence can come to light that may further implicate someone that the public was largely unaware of. Like you said, why in the world is Harvey in the digital forensics for one of the killer's phones? Why would they be talking? What would they have to talk about? What other connection does Harvey, this sort of older gentleman, have with the Latin Kings gang who pulled off this assassination of Dan Markel? That's a real serious question. The possible consciousness of guilt leaving with Donna on a one-way ticket to Vietnam, a non-extraditable country, is suspicious. I wouldn't be surprised if the prosecutor goes back to that Latin Kings member and says, hey, I got to know more about what you talked about with Harvey and what his role was, and you're going to have to expound on that information that came to light at trial.
How many cards do you think Charlie holds right now? Is he obviously he was the first Adelson to go down, but is he the one at the end of the day who's going to be holding the strongest card to say, hey, guess what? Y'all want information on Dad? You want some information on Mom? You want some stuff on Wendi? And anybody else that I can help you with? He seemed to be very much in the know on all of everything that was going on. He was a key player in the whole damn thing. Could that give him any sort of leverage in court? And if so, being involved with a murder is a pretty big deal. But what kind of bargaining chips, or what could the prize be for Charlie if he were to start flipping on everyone?
Yeah, like I said, there's sort of the Adelson camp on the one side, and then Magbanua and the Latin Kings killers on the other side. But the person who's close to both sides is Charlie. We didn't see that with Donna. Donna didn't have a ton of direct contact with the Latin Kings and Magbanua, except for the paper trail. But that being said, Charlie's in the middle of all this. He's meeting with Magbanua, and he appears to have the most knowledge of what's going on. And so could he have some sort of missing links that the prosecution might not be aware of yet? Could he use those missing links to try to improve his situation in prison? We saw Ghislaine Maxwell in the Epstein case be interviewed by the DOJ, and then she got sent to a cushy, white collar resort prison. And so there are moves that can be made behind those bars, depending on the information Charlie might have.
Go ahead, Tony.
No, go ahead, Stacey.
Well, if they were to offer some of those things to Charlie, do they follow through on that? Do they get their information then go, yeah, we're good, you can stay right where you are? I'm just wondering how that works.
How that works can be a very informal and uncertain process. At this point, the government holds all the cards, or most of the cards in Charlie's case. And so, it would best practices would be for him to get an attorney to approach authorities and say he has this additional information, and you don't disclose all of it. You don't disclose the details, but you give a vague sense to what it is. And this is what Charlie wants. Is this something the government might be willing to agree upon? And you can even have what are called written proffer agreements that outline the obligations of both sides. Sometimes there's just an informal handshake agreement. And when that happens, there is a lot less certainty, a lot less way to legally compel the government to uphold their end, or even the inmate to uphold their end.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that.
It's like one of those things where you got nothing to lose. You might as well take the chance and hope that it does do something for you. But if not, well, you are putting your own safety on the line, I would think, at some extent, depending on who you're testifying against and what sort of information you're bringing to the table, though.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we're talking about the Latin Kings gang who was involved in this, they can be some scary mofos,
Yeah.
And they've got tentacles within prison communities. And so you got to think about that. And then you just got to think about the possible snitch jacket that he would have to wear if he did disclose more information, including against his own family. There are politics in prison. There's an ethical code in prison. And if you're tattling to the government on your own family, well, some gangs might not like that. They might see that as lacking integrity or however they style it. And so certainly some risk for Charlie if he were to go down that road.
I mean, risks inside the prison and risks outside the prison. Wendy's still alive. There's family members out there. And a lot of times in any sort of a gang culture, sometimes you're not going to take out the person that's being the snitch. You're going to take out the family. You're going to take out people that mean something. So you have to live with the repercussions of what you did that was viewed as disrespectful or however it would be. Criminal appeal success rates are not high, below 7%. Donna's, I feel like Donna's attorney just opens up the door for the possibilities of this to happen. When you look at this from that perspective, as an attorney, what sort of grounds might Donna Adelson have for an appeal here?
There are no glaring appellate issues that come to mind in my review of the trial. The defense did put on a defense that they called several witnesses, and I thought that at least the strategy behind that was smart. They were trying to explain the payments as extortion. They were trying to explain that this was going to be a long trip to Vietnam, and that's why there wasn't a return ticket. I think they did a good job there, or at least as good as they could. I don't see a strong ineffective assistance of counsel claim just because it's such a high bar. It's so difficult to get an appellate judge to say your trial attorney was objectively bad, and also due to their badness, that's why you were convicted and not based on some independent reason. It's just such a high bar. So I think the walls are closing in on Donna here, and I'm not sure she has many outs, if any.
Does money play a factor? I mean, this is an extremely wealthy family. Does money play a role in this? Wink, wink, if you know what I mean.
Certainly resources come into play, not only at the trial level, but at the appellate level. You can hire the best appellate attorney in your state or in the country, and that's going to be thousands and thousands, if not, more than that, could even be seven figures, depending on the appeal. So she's going to be able, ostensibly, to arm herself with good legal counsel, but then, she didn't get like the foremost trial attorney in the nation, and I don't know what her reasoning was behind that. I'm not sure. Yeah. Either it's a judgment issue, or it's a resource issue, or it's no one wants to take the case, and so those could still be impediments at the appellate level.
I guess that was going to kind of be my question, and maybe we can expound upon it a little bit greater. What on earth do you think was going through their minds of the Adelsons to go, Jackie seems like she'll do a good job for us. I mean, she already has a history. She's got some baggage on her. I know she's a practicing attorney again, but there was some stuff that, it led me to feel like, wow, she really relates to Donna in a lot of ways. I felt like there was some leakage throughout the trial of Jackie even kind of spouting off some things about, kids, they don't even want to call their parents, and the parents do so much for them. It was kind of creepy. But I'm wondering who said this is who we want to represent us. Obviously, Donna made the final call. Do you think that was for her legal prowess, or because she reminded her of herself?
there are a lot of considerations that can go into whom a person retains as their counsel. Certainly legal prowess should be at the top of that list. And I thought Jackie did a fine job. These cases are hard and trials are hard. But, one thing that comes up too is the relationship factor between the client and the attorney. Sometimes you relate with someone so well, you build this trust, you build this rapport. And perhaps you receive promises or representations that, hey, this is how I feel about the case. This is what we think is going to happen at trial. And that can be a really comfy feeling when you have a great relationship with your attorney. But that relationship piece should not outweigh other considerations like track record, like legal prowess, and courtroom ability.
Yeah, without a doubt. Donna obviously basically she's sending herself to prison after what she did. This is going to be a nightmare for her, I would assume. She's going to be serving time at Lowell Correctional, from what we understand. Federal investigators found severe and prevalent sexual abuse there recently. How do elderly, wealthy defendants fare in a facility like this? She's going out of jail. She's going to prison.
Yeah, it's going to be a harsh environment in there. And just because you're up in age, that doesn't insulate you from the horrors of incarceration. The prison officials are charged with trying to maintain the safety of the inmates, but there are staffing issues, there are resource issues, and those prison staff are just terribly outnumbered. And so things happen behind those bars, and I don't wish harm upon anyone in there. But the reality is that that's something that she's looking at, and the fact that she's playing herself as a sweet old grandmother is not going to prevent those kinds of risks.
Do you have any concept of how many elderly people are serving time?
Just anecdotal from being in the court system, the criminal court system for 13 years, visiting clients in jail, visiting jail facilities as a prosecutor, prison facilities as well. It's more than you'd think. That you go in there and there are some old heads just hanging out, and there's a good number of them, and they're in general population hanging out with a 24-year-old Latin Kings member who's a violent predator. And so, and no disrespect to Latin Kings specifically, I'm just using as an example, there are gangs in there that have dangerous people. Some of them are not, some of them are. And so, it's more than you'd think. And those folks have a tough time. Sometimes they have allegiances and they're looked after. Sometimes they become targets and they're taken advantage of.
For her having the money, I have no idea what their resources are anymore. Who knows? They could be completely broke by this point. But I think the thought process there through many people when she gets in there is they have money, whether that's true or not. I can't imagine that is necessarily a great thing to be known for while you're in prison. That seems to be something that you could be extorted for pretty quickly.
Oh, 100%. Like, it puts a target on your back. And unfortunately, Donna, just based on, biology and her age, is not the best position to physically defend herself. What is she going to do? Align herself with the Aryan Nation in there? I'm not so sure that's how it's going to play out. She doesn't provide much benefit to them unless they're just taking all of her money. So she certainly becomes a target in that sense, but she also has at least a little leverage to try to make alliances and gain some protection as well.
How long
now the people from whom she gains protection might soon become her enemies as the years go on. Though you never know.
What kind of jailhouse tattoo do you think Donna's going to get?
Oh no.
Dear, maybe some kind of a loaf of banana bread on the thigh, or hard to say.
Banana bread on one thigh, paella on the other.
I want that damn recipe. Can we stop talking about the banana bread? What was so special about it?
I'm surprised she didn't lace something in the banana bread for Danny. If she's baking him this banana bread, I mean, that could have been the way that this all could have slowly happened and nobody would have been the wiser. Well, he had something. We don't know what. But the fact that she already was at hearing that we saw kind of the preview of what we would see if she were to take the stand before the trial. She had a lot of complaints. The mattress is just horrible. Can she get another one? And her earwax is building up and this and that. Is prison going to provide more amenities and please Donna better than the county jail was? Or is it going to be worse?
It's probably going to be worse in part because she's not going to have a judge to kind of complain about this stuff to. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're going through a trial, your defense attorney can bring up these issues and oftentimes the judges don't do anything, but sometimes they'll say, hey, you got to make sure a person's getting their medication. You got to make sure if they're sick, they're taken to the infirmary, that kind of thing. But there's not going to be a judge saying that. There's going to be Donna perhaps going to some prison official and saying, hey, this bed is really hard. And the prison official's going to say, well, you're convicted of killing your son-in-law and you're here forever. And I've got a million other things to attend to. So have a good night.
Oh, God.
And have a good night indeed, Donna. There you go.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go. Donna Adelson in prison. I would imagine, I mean, obviously sentencing has not taken place yet. Donna's 75. For all intents and purposes, she's there for the rest of her life. Is she not, Eric?
Oh, 100%. Unless there is some appeal that I'm not seeing that can be meritorious, or if she strikes some deal with authorities to provide information and get some kind of reduction, those things are within the realm of possibility. Otherwise, she's going to die in there.
I wonder if she's going to regret those tattoos if she gets out then. She's going to regret the paella.
We all do, Tony. We all do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure what gang that would be aligned with on the inside or outside, but yeah, so those visuals are something to consider. Not something I want to consider, but
no, especially on the thigh. We're good.
Yeah.
Thanks for that visual, Eric. Appreciate that.
I'm just picturing the paella. Okay. There's a lot of horrible ways I could go.
Like, you want what?
Right.
You want some of Harvey's paella for dinner? God. All right. And on that note, Eric Faddis, defense attorney, former prosecutor, as always, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight into this. Your thoughts, your comments, let us know on YouTube. If you're watching us, we appreciate all the ones that you're giving us on live. But please do keep throwing them out there. We'll check those and bring them up again as we continue our conversation on this and other segments.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.